Welcome to episode 4 of the Gentle Knitter podcast. My name is Nicole and I'm coming to you from Ottawa, Ontario. Today is Sunday, June 26th, and thank you so much for joining me today. It's been about a month since I last recorded, and I really missed you guys, so I'm happy to be back. I was away on holidays. I went to visit my parents in New Brunswick. It was a lovely vacation. It was quite the weather was not all that great. It was cold and rainy, but it didn't matter. I had such a nice time. I still was able to go for nice long walks on the beach, and I did a lot of knitting and sleeping and reading and eating and all those good things. So it was very relaxing, but I was quite disconnected to the internet. So I know a lot of you have contacted me, and I haven't had a chance to reply to a lot of the questions and comments that you've left for me, and I'm sorry about that, but I will be getting to them. And actually that segues into me saying a big thank you to everybody who's joined the Ravelry group, who's subscribed on YouTube. I'm overwhelmed by the response I've been getting. I have, I think, over 300 members in the Ravelry group and over 1,300 YouTube subscribers, which blows my mind. It's quite amazing. So thank you. Thank you for being lovely and active and sort of having that conversation with me, which is what I was hoping for. It's lovely to hear from, the people on the other side of the camera, if you will. So thank you for that. I had mentioned in one of previous episode that when I reached 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, I would do a giveaway, and so we are way past that now. So I will be announcing a little giveaway a little bit later in the episode, so stay tuned for that. I also wanted to mention that I re-recorded this episode 3 or 4 times because I was having a lot of problems with my laptop. I don't know what's going on, but it keeps crashing. So I'm using a different laptop, and I can't figure out how to hook up my mic to this laptop. I'm sure there's a way, but I really wanted to record today, and so I just decided to go ahead and do it without the mic. So it means there might be a slight difference in the sound quality, and I hope it's not too distracting. I don't think it'll be quite as good because I'm using the laptop mic as opposed to the other mic that I was using previously. So anyway, hopefully I'll get that all sorted out for next episode. But in the meantime, leave me a comment if the sound and image quality was really problematic on this episode, or if you thought it was okay. If you think this is good, then I might use this laptop in the future because my other laptop is just being very finicky. So anyway, it might be an ongoing problem. Let me grab my notes. Let's see. So I got a ton of questions on the question thread in Ravelry, and which is absolutely wonderful. I wasn't really expecting that, and my plan was to sort of just answer questions as they came up in the podcast. But I got so many that I really wouldn't have time to do that. So what I'm going to do is I will do a couple of episodes that are just answering questions, and I think the next episode I record will be a questions episode. So if you have a question that you didn't have a chance to post in the Ravelry group, go ahead, and if I don't get to all of them next time, I will record more than one questions episode. But I'll cover one of the questions that I got that I actually that many people asked, and that is it's not knitting related, but a lot of people wanted to know about my bee tattoo. So in the intro to the podcast, you might have noticed that there's a shot of me spinning, and there's a really good shot of a bee that I have tattooed on my right forearm. I can try and show you, although it's quite awkward to show you here. Maybe you can sort of see, it's at a bad angle, so anyway, I'm sorry about that, but like I said, it's clearly visible in the intro. And a lot of people wanted to know if there was a significance behind it, you know, why I had a bee tattoo. So I thought I would talk a little bit about that. So why a bee tattoo? Well, I've always been really fascinated by bees ever since I found out when I was a kid that they actually can communicate with each other, that they have different jobs in their social structure, that they are able to, you know, navigate over long distances and basically locate different areas where there are a lot of flowers and communicate that information with each other. I'm so fascinated by how, you know, with the natural history of bees. And because I work for a natural history museum, it seemed like a logical thing for me to have nature-inspired tattoos. So I've got a bee tattoo. I also have a moth tattoo. And with moths, I had a chance to work on a moth exhibit several years ago that featured photographs by this man. His name is Jim de Rivières, and he is a photographer and a moth specialist, and basically photographs moths of the Ottawa area. And then he blows those photos up. He makes these giant prints of these moth photos, and I have a few. I have one print here. I can see it right there in my living room, and another one in my work office. And I absolutely adore his work. I will put a link to his website, and you can see a lot of his photos. But he basically, the way that he photographs them really highlights the incredible beauty and diversity in moth wing patterns. You know, when you think of moths, you know, compared to butterflies, they seem quite drab and colorless, but when you see them up close, they actually have such a beautiful variety of color and pattern. And it's not an obvious beauty, and so I'm attracted to that. And also, the other thing is that it might seem like an odd choice to have a moth tattoo when you're a knitter, because it's the thing we all dread, right? Having a moth infestation. But on the other hand, moths love yarn just as much as I do. They love wool, so so I can relate to that. The moth tattoo I have, I can try and show you, is it's actually a gypsy moth, and they are not fiber-eating moths. But I just thought it was really beautiful. I like scientific illustrations, especially vintage ones. And those are the type of tattoos that I like, just the very simple black line tattoos. So, so those are two tattoos that I have. I have more, but the other ones are harder for me to show. But I do intend on getting more. I would like to get some flower ones that would incorporate maybe some other insects. Anyway, so that's the story behind my tattoos. All right, well, let's get into knitting. I do have quite a lot to show you, so I will jump right into that. So the first thing I'm working on is a shawl called Enna's scarf, but it isn't a scarf, it's a shawl. It's from a book that came out many years ago called Scarf Style. It was an Interweave Press release, and it's a book filled with scarves, but it does have this shawl pattern that was done by Nancy Bush, and it's a really beautiful pattern. I will insert a photo here. I knit this, I've started knitting this, and it's all tangled up, sorry. You start with the edge. It's hard to see with the white in the background, but it's kind of a diamond pattern. You can see against my hair here. So it's diamonds all along the edge, and there's kind of an eyelet, and then it goes into sort of smaller diamonds, like a very plain, repetitive pattern for the body of the shawl. And like I said, it's patterned by Nancy Bush, and I believe it was named after a friend of hers named Anna, and she's an Estonian lady. And so the pattern, so the shawl itself is like a lot of Nancy Bush patterns, inspired by Estonian knitting. The yarn I'm using is a very beautiful CVM yarn. So CVM stands for, I got it written down here, it stands for California Variegated Mutant. And basically it's Rommeldale is a breed of sheep, and this farmer in California noticed that he had a sheep that had very different coloring from the regular Rommeldale coloring. Usually those sheep are kind of a whitish color, but this sheep had more creamy or beigey coloring and had this really interesting face pattern that looks a little bit like the patterning on a badger's face. And so he started breeding that sheep, and basically eventually got a ram that had the same patterning, and then just basically created a variation on the Rommeldale called the CVM. And it's a really, really beautiful yarn. It's very soft. Well, when I say very soft, soft for kind of a rustic yarn. As you're getting to know me, you know that I am not, I do love soft yarns too. I adore cashmere, and I do knit with it, but I don't mind the rustic yarns. And this is such a beautiful color. It's the natural CVM color. It's got kind of a slightly tweedy, it's a beige that has a little bit of gray in it. And the company is called a Backyard Fiberworks Company, American Wool. And so it's a single farm CVM lot 2015, 250 yards. And I bought this yarn at Rhinebeck last year. And so I really love it. I think it'll make an absolutely beautiful shawl. And I've been wanting to knit the shawl for a really long time, ever since I had the book. It's always appealed to me. It has that more geometric lace sort of patterning that I really, really love. So, so that's the first thing I've been knitting on, and I've only done the border so far, so I still have a bit of work to do on that. And it's basically residing in a little boku bucket bag that I love, with the little cross patterns. For those of you who don't know, Boku is a Toronto company. It's a shop in Toronto, but they also have an online store. And the person who owns the company, her name is Aruna, and she's a friend of mine, and she makes beautiful things. I have a lot of Boku stuff in my in my house. So actually, you can see here a project bag that is a Boku bag. There's a lot of Boku in my house. But anyway, I absolutely love this. I think it's so pretty with the color of the yarn. So that's the first thing. Then what else am I working on? The next thing I'm knitting is a cardigan called the Georgetown. It's a pattern by Hannah Fettig, and I've shown this before, but it's a beautiful tweedy cardigan with a folded over ribbed collar. I'll show you a picture that shows the front. It's quite lovely. And the yarn I'm using is Quince & Company Owl. It's the yarn that's called For in the Pattern, in the Bubo colorway. And it's beautiful gray, like medium to dark gray. And I'm knitting it in pieces. The pattern actually has instructions for both, so you can knit it seamlessly or you can knit it in pieces. And I know people probably think, why is she knitting it in pieces when she has the option to knit it seamlessly? Well, I actually really like knitting sweaters, especially cardigans, um, in pieces. And the reason is that I find that I just get a better result in terms of over time, the sweater just holds its shape better because the seams add some structure to the garment. And so I really like knitting in pieces, and I have done so much seaming that I'm quite efficient at it now, and I'm happy with the results. So I don't mind at all knitting things in pieces. Um, but anyway, I'm making some progress. I've just started the back, but I'm looking forward to getting that done in time for when the weather gets a bit cooler. And today is not one of those days. It's so hot right now. I am not drinking hot tea today, that's for sure. So I'm working on that. Let's see, what else? I am also working on my small flower mitts by Pinaguri and Lee Miller. These are some beautiful little color work mitts that I can show you. I have not made any progress since the last time. I'll just show these to you very quickly. I forgot to bring them with me on my holidays, and so basically these unfortunately got zero attention. I will be working on these. I really intend on focusing on them because they are part of the knit along. It's part of the Camabornia podcast knit along, and I really want to get them done because they're a lovely pattern. So I will try and make a bit of more progress on those. So the last thing I'm working on are socks, but I have really nothing to show you. These are, I'm using the yarn that, that I got from Rebecca of the Butterfly in My Hair podcast. She sent me this lovely yarn. It's by Sandnes Garn, and the name of the yarn is Tresco. It is a sock yarn, but it's sport weight, so it's a bit thicker than the usual yarn I use. And for those of you who remember, I actually got 6 skeins of this, and so I am using 3 to make my socks, but I will be giving away the other 3 skeins to a lucky listener or watcher, one of you. So I alluded to this a little bit earlier. I wanted to do a giveaway once I got 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. And so, yeah, so you can basically enter to win 3 skeins of this yarn. There's the darker color, and then there is this pretty kind of marled paler gray. And so the socks that I'll be knitting, I'm starting the cuff with the darker color, and then I'll be knitting the body with this lighter, but I think I'm going to put some stripes, some darker gray stripes. I'm going to try it out. I'm not sure how well those will show up just because of the marled effect on the lighter yarn. The stripes might not be defined enough. So I'll do a little test, and you'll get to see next time whether I go ahead with that plan or not. But anyway, basically, this is what I've just started. I've got 2 or 3 rows done already, but for the giveaway, what I am going to do is I'm going to create a thread in the group. So in order to enter the contest, you need to join the group in Ravelry, and basically just post, just put a comment in that thread. I'll title it something like, sock yarn giveaway or something like that. And I was thinking let's do just a little question, and you can basically answer this, and I will draw from all of the people who submit an answer. So the question will be, what is your favorite thing about summer? Seeing as we've just entered the summer period, we just passed the beautiful summer solstice with the strawberry moon, which unfortunately we couldn't see here because it was cloudy. But yeah, oops, there goes my power cord. Sorry about that. Yeah, so let me know, what is your favorite thing about summer? It could be anything. It could be what kind of holidays you like to take. Is there some foods that you like to eat in the summer, or a certain activity that that you only do in the summertime? Anything at all. It could be, you know, what you like to do outside, if it's gardening or going biking, or even knitting. Do you have special things that you like to knit in the summer? Yeah, I would love to hear that. So I will draw a winner on August 1st, and we'll basically, so I'll close the thread at that time, and then I'll announce the winner on the following podcast, the one after August 1st. So yeah, go ahead and join in. That would be great. You can win some sock yarn, and then knit a pair of socks along with me. I think that is it for things that are in my knitting basket right now. I also have a little bit of spinning. I decided to try something a little different. Usually I spin on my spinning wheel. I have a couple of spindles, and I don't have a lot of experience working on them, but I thought I would try and sort of remedy that, especially with the warm weather. It's nice to sit out on the deck, and it's just a lot easier to pull out my spindle. So I have been spinning some really interesting fiber. Here's the fiber, and here is the resulting yarn. It's really very tonal. I'm spinning it on my Moosey, my Bosworth Moosey. So it is a spindle that actually, the whorl is made out of moose antler. It's a spindle that I bought at Rhinebeck this year, and last year, and I really love the way it spins, and it's quite beautiful. It's maybe hard to see, but it's kind of got a mottled gray and kind of ivory, like the actual antlers, and you can see like the pores in the bone. Just so you know, no moose was harmed in the making of this spindle. They are discarded moose antlers that Mr. Bosworth uses, and it's got a rosewood shaft, and it's really beautifully balanced. It spins really absolutely. It's got a lovely long whorl to it. So the fiber I'm using is, I've got 4 ounces of it. It's fiber that I ordered a while back by a company called GeorgetowCardigan and Wool. Here's their business card, and the fiber is so gorgeous. It's a mix of border Leicester, Icelandic, and hemp. And there's not a lot of hemp in it. There's just a few filaments here and there, like the lighter stuff like that is hemp here. And it is so beautifully, the way it's prepared. It's super, super light, and a dream to spin with. It spins itself, and it's a slightly longer staple because of the Icelandic and the border Leicester, and it's really, really easy to spin. I'm amazed at how fast I'm spinning this up, and I just love how super rustic it is. It's actually quite soft, well, for me, for my standards, and it's got, I'm kind of, you can see that it has that mix of dark and pale gray that I'm completely in love with this fiber. I've got 4 ounces, so quite a bit. I'm hoping to maybe spin enough to make a shawl. I think it would make a really beautiful shawl. So anyway, so that's what I'm spinning, and I'm absolutely loving working on the spindle. I've tried spinning other things with the spindle, namely some, I think I had some merino, and I was having a really hard time, but merino is not always super easy to spin with, but this stuff spins beautifully. They have a really neat blend name for this blend. It is, they call it the Primitive Biota Spinner's Web Blend. So yeah, I just I'm super happy that I got that that fiber, and I checked on their Etsy in their Etsy shop. I will put the link, and they do have some available right now. So if you are curious about this fiber, I would say if you like kind of very rustic woolly wools, that is definitely one to try. All right, well, I will now go into things that I've finished. And so the segment I like to call What's Keeping Me Warm, although right now I am not wearing any hand knits because it is way, 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 way too hot. First of all, the one thing that I've talked about quite a bit and that I did finish in time for my trip is my Big Star shawl, and it's so aptly named because it is absolutely gigantic. But I finished it and I'm so happy with it. It turned out really, really nice. Let me see if I can show you the patterning there. Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, it was a perfect shawl for my trip to New Brunswick because it was so cool and rainy. I'm going to put this on for like 2 seconds, but it is really, oh, so cozy and a really beautiful, beautiful pattern. I ended up not putting the fringe. I might still do that. I have enough yarn left over, but I don't know. I just, for now, I'm going to live with it without the fringe. Oh, super hot. The yarn is Briggs and Little. Their sport weight, and the color is, they call it seafoam, but to me this is not seafoamy at all. It's more of a teal, but it's really, really pretty, and I'm very happy with it. It's way too big to show you the entirety, but I'm quite happy with how it turned out, and I'm looking forward to wearing it this fall. I also finished my Honeybadger socks, which I also talked about last time. I really need to get some sock blockers because it would be just so much nicer to show you finished socks on blockers. But here they are. I'm really happy with how they turned out. They're quite pretty. They fit me really well. I haven't blocked them yet, which is why they kind of look wonky. But yeah, the yarn is Regia. It's, you know, one of their, I bought this yarn a long time ago, so I'm not sure. I think it's a four ply. Sorry, I'm bad with these kinds of things, but pale yellow. They're showing up a bit here that may be, well, a little more yellow than that, but yeah, really nice yarn, really nice pattern. I'm very happy with how they turned out. Then the last thing I wanted to show you is a finished object that that I knit a long time ago, maybe 10 years ago. And I had given them to my mom. And when, well, them, you don't know what they are, but these are socks that I knit for my mom about 10 years ago. And she basically gave them back to me to darn because they need a little TLC. The heels have kind of, you know, they're quite old, but these are called the embossed leaf socks here. I'll try and show you the pattern better. I love this pattern. I've knit these socks a couple times actually. They are from a book called Favorite Socks, another Interweave Press publication. And actually I was, you know, this book, like I said, I've had for a long time. It was edited by Ann Budd and Ann Merrow. It came out in 2006, so it's about 10 years old. And so I was looking through it again, and there's a lot of really beautiful patterns in this book. And it made me think of, you know, one thing I might want to do in the podcast is kind of go into my library and pull out favorite books, because I find that I used to buy a lot of knitting books, and now I buy patterns online more, buy PDFs, but I have a lot of really beautiful books that are probably still available either in print or maybe from your local library, and it might be fun to revisit these books, but this one is a really good one. So the pattern is that you can see them a little bit better there. I really like those embossed leaf socks by Mona Schmidt, but there's a lot of other really pretty patterns. These uptown boot socks have kind of a very pretty cable, kind of a subtle cable. And then there's also these retro rib socks, which I really like. I love those kind of more all-over pattern socks. But anyway, this book is really lovely. So I'm going to be fixing these. I actually found the yarn. I found a ball of the yarn that I had used in my stash. This is, it's no wonder that there are holes in these socks, because this yarn is the most inappropriate sock yarn in the history of the world. It's a baby alpaca, merino wool, and cashmere blend. So no nylon, you know, it's a very, very soft, fluffy yarn, very pretty. The brand is called Luxury Collection Alpaca Cashmere. I bought it on sale. I don't know if the video stopped there, but it stopped for me anyway. Yeah, these are quite pretty. And while I was at my parents', my mom found this darning egg that used to belong to my great aunt, and she said, "Oh, do you want this?" Of course I do. So I will be darning these socks with this very cool vintage darning egg. As you can see, they really need a lot of work. So I will be darning those, and maybe I'll show you the results when I'm done. So I'll be working on those in the next little while. These were kind of like bed socks. They weren't meant to be worn out, and I know that my mom didn't. She was only wearing them in the house, but you know, with the fiber content, I'm surprised they lasted this long. But those will be fixed and ready to send back to her. Let's see. I thought it might be fun to do some reviews of a couple of books that I received, or I should say publications I've received recently. The first one is one that I was really looking forward to receiving. It's called The Book of Haps. It was published by Kate Davies, and she is a really wonderful designer. She's put out several books that have that are themed, that have kind of a Shetland theme. She lives in Scotland, not in Shetland, but in Scotland, and I think is greatly inspired by traditional knitting. She used to be an academic, and she writes a lot about the history of different textile traditions, and I really, really enjoy her writing. I like her patterns too, but I'm especially attracted to her publications because she does a lot of research on the different topics, and so there's a lot of historical information. And haps, for those who don't know, are basically the term hap just means shawl. It's a Scottish dialect word for a simple shawl, and so haps are just basically the word for shawl, but traditionally in Shetland knitting, um, there are shawls called hap shawls, and they often have very similar features. So when I ordered this book, I thought that the designs would be a little more based on the tradition, what I think of as a traditional hap shawl. The book is a little bit different than that. It's got a couple of patterns that to me have that traditional hap design, but a lot of them are sort of, they take inspiration from haps and how hap shawls are constructed, but the designers have basically taken the hap to reinterpreted the idea of hap shawls into some new designs. Now, to be perfectly honest, I love traditional hap shawls, and so I was a little bit, I don't want to say disappointed, but I wasn't expecting the designs that are in this book. There are amazing designers in here, and some really beautiful and very very original takes on the hap tradition. There are some traditional hap designs too. So let me show you some of the designs, and you can see what I'm talking about. The first one is called Modern Dye, and that is a very traditional hap construction. So it's a big square that has a garter center, and then a feather and fan in different colors around that middle square, and then a lace border. You can see that a little bit better in this photo here. So you've got the garter center, and then the feather and fan, and the lace border. So there's that one. But then there's a pattern by Vera Valimaki called Theme and Variation, and it is a shawl that it incorporates a garter edge and some striping. It's quite lovely. It's got sort of an asymmetrical color. You know, there's more stripes on one side than the other. It's quite lovely. There's a pattern by Bristol Ivy called the Harewood Hap. It's quite lovely. It's more of a stole shape, and I think it's knitted in a very interesting intarsia technique, which I've just skimmed the book, and I tried to wrap my brain around the technique that she's using. I'll have to look at it more closely to understand it, but it does look interesting. The one standout pattern for me is the most traditional one. It's called the Hulan Shawl by Donna Smith, and it is a half-hap, so it's basically a triangular shawl with a tree of life pattern, which is a very traditional Shetland lace pattern. I really love this shawl. I love the yarn they've used. It's a beautiful Jameson and Smith Shetland Supreme two-ply lace weight. So it's a very traditional lace, Shetland lace design. It's very, very pretty. It's very me. So I'm definitely going to be knitting that one, and I would love to order the yarn for it. There's some really neat shawls with some Fair Isle details. There's one made out of Icelandic yarn that's quite interesting. Gudrun Johnson, who organized the trip that I went on when I went to Shetland, has a really lovely one called Lang Air, and it's just a very stripy shawl, and the stripes go in different directions. Let's see if I can find the schematics here, show you the direction of the stripes, but it creates this very pretty shawl, and I love the colors that she chose. I think they were inspired by some of the granite, the different shades of pink and gray granite. There goes my phone. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Anyway, there's, like I said, a wide variety of interesting patterns. A lot of them are not necessarily my style, but the real reason to get this book is for the articles. There's the first half of the book is all different articles on the history of haps and the history of knitting in Shetland, and it's so well researched. I haven't read the articles in full. I've just kind of skimmed them, but it's really well done. And because I'm really interested in Shetland haps, I think this is a great addition to my library. I did want to show you a couple of other books. This one in particular, which I picked up when I was in Shetland in a really lovely bookstore in Lerwick. And it's called The Heirloom Knitting's Shetland Hap Shawls, Then and Now by Sharon Miller, who's an expert with hap. And it's a really beautiful book. Again, it's got a lot of historical content at the beginning, and it goes into quite a lot of detail on sort of how haps are created. And then there's quite a few patterns and a lot of charts so that you can sort of create your own hap. And it's a really great book. I've knit a couple of haps, and I think what I'll do is I'll show them to you in a different episode and talk to you a little bit about my experience knitting them. But these books are great if you're interested in traditional hap knitting. And the last book I want to show you is this one. It's Shetland Textiles, 800 BC to the present, and it's a really fascinating history book on knitting in Shetland. And I thought I bought this when I was in Shetland at the Shetland Museum in Lerwick, and it's a really wonderful book on the textiles. It's got very beautiful pictures, and this is about spinning and dyeing in Shetland, and this shows you all the natural colors of Shetland sheep. It's a very interesting book that shows you there's a lot of historical material from the museum's collections, and so I highly recommend this book if you're interested in Shetland knitting. So that's it for that topic. Then the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is Making Magazine. I had kind of alluded to it in my last episode, but I got my hands on a copy of this beautiful publication. It's done by Carrie Bostic Hogue, who's also known as Matter. She's a designer. I've knit quite a lot for her. She's an absolutely wonderful designer, and she's put this magazine together. It's a publication that comes out twice a year. This is the first issue, the spring issue, and it's called Flora. So everything, all the projects in the magazine are sort of inspired by the flora theme, and it is just full of all kinds of different making projects. So it's very well, it's aptly named. There is cross stitch. There is beautiful embroidery projects. There's some sewing projects. I actually really love these little pouches. I'm hoping to make those. And then there's a ton of beautiful knitting patterns. There's recipes too, but it's really the knitting patterns that got me. Let me show you this very beautiful little cardigan by Carrie called the Flora Cardi. I really want to knit that. There's a gorgeous shawl by Dawn Catanzaro. This shawl here, just so pretty, and look at the photography. I mean, it's just breathtaking. A gorgeous cardigan by Hannah Fettig. Anyway, it goes on and on. There's tons of patterns in here, and I want to knit them all. I literally want to knit every single one. So I highly, highly recommend you getting your hands on this publication if you can. You can check out Matter, her website, and it will have information there. But I have a second issue, or second copy of the magazine that I am going to be giving away with the yarn that I will be drawing for my 1,000 plus subscribers. So there's another incentive for you to join the group and to submit a little entry so that you can win a copy of this beautiful magazine. And thank you, Carrie, for donating that to the podcast. I really appreciate that, and I'm sure whoever wins the beautiful magazine will also appreciate it. I think that's it for me today. Again, another slightly longer episode, but I just had a lot to catch up with you. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will be back probably in a week or two, and I will be answering your questions. So again, if you have a question that you want to submit, go ahead and join the Ravelry group, and I will be addressing those in my next episode. Until then, I hope you're well, and I hope that the hot weather is not keeping you away from your knitting needles. It's certainly not keeping me away from them, even though it's quite sweltering here. But I hope that you have a lot of lovely summer weather and a lot of fun knitting ahead of you. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.